My parents faked my college expulsion to keep me quiet. I was standing in the registrar's office, holding a letter that shouldn't exist. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the words, but there it was in black and white. Maya Chen has never been expelled from this institution. 3 months. 3 months I'd been living in my childhood bedroom, crying myself to sleep every night, believing I was a failure. 3 months of my mother bringing me lukewarm soup and whispering, "Don't worry, honey. These things happen." 3 months of my father avoiding eye contact and muttering about consequences and learning responsibility. All lies. The registrar, Mrs. Patterson, was looking at me with genuine concern. "Sweetie, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I had. The ghost of the daughter I used to be. The straight-A student who'd never gotten so much as a parking ticket, let alone expelled from college. The girl who trusted her parents completely. "There has to be a mistake," I whispered, my voice cracking. I was expelled in February. Academic dishonesty. Cheating on my organic chemistry final. Mrs. Patterson frowned and pulled up my file on her computer. Her fingers clicked across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Maya Chen, junior year, pre-med track. No disciplinary actions. No academic probation. Your GPA is 3.87. You're actually on the dean's list. The room started spinning. How do you process information that completely destroys everything you thought you knew about your life? About your family? About yourself? But the letter, I stammered, pulling out the crumpled paper I'd carried in my wallet like a scarlet letter for months. "It came from this office. It has the university seal." She took it from my trembling hands and examined it carefully. Her expression shifted from confusion to something that looked like pity. "This isn't our letterhead," she said softly. "And this signature? That's not from anyone in our office. Honey, I think someone's been lying to you." The words hit me like a physical blow. Someone had been lying to me, but not just someone. The two people I trusted most in the world. The people who were supposed to protect me, guide me, love me unconditionally. My parents had orchestrated my entire downfall. But why? Why would they destroy their own daughter's life? Why would they watch me spiral into depression and self-doubt when they knew the truth? I stumbled out of that office with more questions than answers, but one thing was crystal clear. The family I thought I knew didn't exist. The parents I'd loved and respected had betrayed me in the most calculated, cruel way possible. And I was about to find out it was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. As I sat in my car in the university parking lot, staring at my clean academic record on my phone, one thought kept echoing in my mind. If they lied about this, what else have they lied about? I had no idea I was about to uncover a web of deception that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. No idea that my parents' betrayal was just the beginning of a nightmare that would cost me my education, my relationships, and nearly my sanity. But I also had no idea how strong I really was. My name is Maya Chen, and until that moment in the registrar's office, I thought I had the perfect family. I'm 21, the only child of Dr. James Chen and Linda Chen. Dad's a successful cardiologist. Mom's a real estate agent who sells million-dollar homes like they're candy bars. We lived in Westfield, Connecticut, in a colonial house with perfectly manicured lawns and a 3-car garage that screamed, "We've made it." Growing up, I was their golden child. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect future mapped out in perfect detail. Pre-med at Yale, then medical school, then following in Dad's footsteps. It wasn't a choice so much as an inevitability. But there were always cracks, little things that didn't quite make sense, like how they never let me handle my own college paperwork. "You focus on studying, sweetie. We'll take care of the administrative stuff." How they insisted on being copied on all my emails with professors and advisors. How they always seemed to know about my academic life before I told them anything. I thought they were just helicopter parents. You know the type. Overprotective, over-involved, but ultimately well-meaning. I was so wrong. The first real red flag should have been my sophomore year when I started dating Marcus. He was a psychology major, funny and kind, with this way of asking questions that made you really think about your answers. My parents hated him instantly. He's not serious about his future, Mom would say over dinner. Psychology? What kind of career is that? Dad was more direct. You're here to focus on your studies, not play house with some boy. But it wasn't just that they disapproved. They actively sabotaged the relationship. They'd call me during our dates with emergencies that always turned out to be nothing. They'd schedule family events on the same days Marcus and I had planned to spend together. Once, I found out they'd actually called his parents to discuss their concerns about our relationship. Marcus was patient at first, but eventually he confronted me. Maya, your parents are trying to control your entire life. Can't you see that? I defended them. Of course I did. They were my parents. They loved me. They wanted what was best for me. They're just protective, I told him. When you love someone, you want to make sure they're making good choices. He looked at me with this expression I couldn't read at the time. Now I know it was pity. That's not love, Maya. That's ownership. We broke up 2 weeks later. I told myself it was for the best. I needed to focus on school. Anyway, the second red flag was my grades. I was pulling A's and high B's in every class, but whenever I called home excited about an exam or a project, my parents seemed disappointed, like my successes weren't quite good enough. A 92 on your organic chemistry midterm? Mom would say, what happened to the other 8 points? It was never celebration. It was always a subtle reminder that I wasn't meeting some impossible standard they'd set in their minds. The third red flag was the money. Despite Dad's successful practice and Mom's real estate commissions, they were always stressed about finances, always reminding me how much my education cost, how many sacrifices they were making. Do you know how much we're spending on your tuition? Dad would ask during our weekly phone calls. The least you can do is make it worth our investment. But here's the thing that should have tipped me off. I'd applied for financial aid. I'd gotten grants and scholarships. I wasn't even sure my parents were paying full tuition. But every time I tried to ask about the details, they'd shut me down. You don't need to worry about money, sweetie. That's our job. I thought they were being generous, protective. I thought I was lucky to have parents who shielded me from financial stress. I was such an idiot. The fourth and biggest red flag was what happened right before my supposed expulsion. I'd been having doubts about medical school, not about my grades or my abilities, but about whether it was really what I wanted. I'd started exploring other options. Maybe graduate school in environmental science. Maybe even switching majors entirely. I made the mistake of mentioning this during a family dinner when I was home for winter break. The temperature in that dining room dropped about 20 degrees. Switching majors? Dad's voice was deadly quiet. After everything we've invested in your future? It's just something I'm considering, I said quickly. I'm not making any decisions yet, but the damage was done. For the rest of that break, my parents were different, cold, distant, like I'd betrayed them in some fundamental way. When I got back to school in January, everything fell off. My parents were calling more frequently, asking more questions, demanding more details about my daily life. It felt suffocating. And then, 6 weeks later, came the letter that destroyed my world. Looking back now, I can see exactly how they did it. How they played on my trust, my love for them, my belief that family always has your back. They knew I'd never question them. They knew I'd never verify their lies. They were counting on it. The fake expulsion letter arrived on a Thursday morning in February. I remember because I was studying for my advanced biochemistry exam, sitting in the library with my textbooks spread across an entire table, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. Honey, we need to talk. Can you come home this weekend? It's important. Something in her tone, even through text, made my stomach clench. But I had exams. I had lab work. I couldn't just drop everything. Can it wait until spring break? I texted back. No. Come home Friday, Dad, and I will explain everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept trying to imagine what could be so urgent. Had someone died? Were they getting divorced? Was Dad sick? I drove home Friday afternoon with my mind racing through every possible scenario. None of them came close to the truth. They were waiting for me in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch like they were about to conduct a business meeting. Mom had been crying. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years since Christmas. "Maya, sit down," Dad said. His voice had that careful, controlled tone he used when delivering bad news to patients' families. I sat in the armchair across from them, my hands gripping the armrests. "What's going on?" Mom pulled out an envelope. Official-looking. University letterhead. My name printed in formal black letters. "This came yesterday," she whispered, holding it out to me with shaking hands. I tore it open, and my world collapsed. "Dear Miss Chun, following our investigation into academic misconduct during your Organic Chemistry 301 final examination, the Academic Standards Committee has determined that you engaged in unauthorized collaboration and plagiarism. Effective immediately, you are expelled from the university. This decision is final and non-appealable." The letter slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. "There has to be a mistake," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "I didn't cheat. I would never cheat." Dad leaned forward, his expression a mixture of disappointment and something else I couldn't identify. "Maya, we know this is hard to accept, but the evidence was clear." "What evidence? What are you talking about?" Mom started crying harder. "They found identical answers on your exam and 3 other students. The same incorrect calculations, the same methodology errors." "That's impossible." I was standing now, pacing. I studied alone. I didn't even sit near anyone during the exam. Professor Williams uses assigned seating. "Sweetie," Dad's voice was gentle but firm, "sometimes when we're under pressure, we make choices we wouldn't normally make. The important thing now is figuring out what comes next." What comes next? What comes next was my entire future crumbling into nothing. "I want to call the school," I said. "I want to talk to Professor Williams. I want to see this evidence." My parents exchanged a look. Quick, but I caught it. "Maya, you're in shock," Mom said. "This isn't the time for denial. The decision is final. Fighting it will only make things worse." Worse? Worse than being expelled for something I didn't do. Worse than having this become a public scandal, Dad said sharply. "Do you want every medical school in the country to know about this? Do you want to destroy any chance you have of rebuilding your future?" Their logic felt wrong, but I was drowning in shame and confusion. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was in denial. Maybe fighting would only make everything worse. What am I supposed to do? I whispered. "You come home," Mom said softly. "You take some time to figure things out. Maybe community college for a semester, to prove you can handle the coursework honestly." Community college. After 3 years at Yale. After a 3.87 GPA. After dreams of medical school and following in my father's footsteps. I spent that weekend in a fog of disbelief and shame. I called in sick to my part-time job at the campus bookstore. I couldn't bear to face my roommates' questions. I couldn't even look at my textbooks without feeling nauseous. By Sunday, my parents had it all figured out. They'd already called the university to arrange for my belongings to be packed and shipped home. They'd researched community colleges in the area. They'd even set up an appointment with a therapist to help me work through the guilt and disappointment. "We're going to get through this together," Dad said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "Family sticks together, no matter what." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So I dropped out of Yale without ever setting foot on campus again. I let them pack up my dorm room, ship my books home, withdraw me from all my classes. I let them convince me I was a cheater and a failure. For 3 months, I lived in shame. I stopped talking to my college friends. I couldn't bear to explain what had happened. I spent most days in my childhood bedroom, sleeping until noon, scrolling through social media, and watching my former classmates post about their internships and graduate school acceptances. My parents were supportive in their way. They never brought up the cheating directly. They just kept talking about moving forward and learning from mistakes and second chances. But something felt wrong. It took me weeks to figure out what it was. They weren't surprised. Neither of them seemed shocked that their straight-A daughter had suddenly become an academic, dishonest failure. It was like they'd been expecting it. Like they'd been preparing for it. That's what finally drove me back to campus that day in May. Not hope that I could somehow appeal the decision, but this growing certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with their story. And when Mrs. Patterson handed me that letter confirming I'd never been expelled, I finally understood the truth. My parents hadn't just lied to me. They'd systematically destroyed my life.
But why?
The drive home from campus was the longest 30 minutes of my life. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to pull over twice just to breathe. I had evidence now, documentation that I'd never been expelled, that my academic record was clean, that everything my parents had told me was a lie. But I still couldn't wrap my mind around the why. Why would they do this to me? Why would they watch me fall apart for months, knowing they were the cause? I walked into the house and found Mom in the kitchen, meal prepping like it was any other Thursday. She looked up when I came in, and her face immediately shifted to that concerned, maternal expression I'd grown so used to over the past 3 months. "How was your day, honey? You were gone longer than usual." I stood there for a moment, just watching her. This woman who'd raised me, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and held me when I cried. This woman who'd been lying to me for months. "I went to Yale," I said quietly. Her hand stilled on the vegetables she was chopping. "Maya, we've talked about this. Going back there isn't healthy. You need to focus on moving forward." I spoke with the registrar. The knife slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the cutting board. For just a second, her mask slipped, and I saw something I'd never seen in my mother's eyes before. Fear. "What did you think you were accomplishing by going there?" she asked, but her voice was different now. Sharper. I wanted to understand what happened. I wanted to see if there was any way to appeal. "Maya, we've been through this." The decision was final. I pulled out the letter from the registrar's office and set it on the kitchen counter between us. According to this, there was no decision to appeal. According to this, I was never expelled. She stared at the paper like it was a snake about to strike. That's impossible. There must be some mistake." "The only mistake was trusting you." The words came out harder than I'd intended, but I was past caring about her feelings. She'd certainly never cared about mine. "Maya, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. You lied to me. You and Dad both lied to me." She was backing away from me now, moving toward the kitchen door, like she was planning to run. "We would never lie to you. We're your parents. We love you. If you love me, then explain this." I held up the registrar's letter. "Explain how I can be expelled from a school that has no record of ever expelling me." I don't know. Maybe there was a clerical error. Maybe they made a mistake." "Mom, stop. Just stop lying." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "The registrar showed me the fake letter you created. It's not even on the right letterhead. The signature isn't from anyone who works there. You fabricated the entire thing." Silence. Long, heavy silence while we stared at each other across the kitchen island. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear her. "Where's your father?" "Don't change the subject. Maya, this is complicated. There are things you don't understand." "Then help me understand. Why would you do this to me? Why would you destroy my life?" She was crying now, but they weren't the tears of guilt or remorse. They were tears of someone who'd been caught. "We were protecting you." Protecting me from what? From making a terrible mistake. I felt like I was going insane. What mistake? Getting an education? Having a future? From throwing away everything we've worked for, everything we've built. We? This is my life we're talking about. Your life that we've sacrificed everything for. Do you have any idea what we've given up for you? What we've invested? There it was. The truth, finally starting to surface. "You are going to change majors," she continued, her voice getting stronger, more defensive. "You are going to waste years of pre-med coursework. Waste the connections your father has made. Waste the opportunities we've created. So, you decided to destroy my life instead? We decided to give you time to come to your senses. To remember what's important. To remember who you are and what you're supposed to become." The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. They'd calculated this, planned it, destroyed my education and my self-worth as a strategic intervention. I'm supposed to become whatever you decide I should become? You're supposed to become the successful, accomplished woman we raised you to be, not some confused kid chasing fantasies about environmental science. Those weren't fantasies. That was me trying to figure out what I actually want from my life. What you want? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Maya, you're 21 years old. You don't know what you want. That's why you have parents. I'm 21 years old, and I'm capable of making my own decisions about my own future. Clearly you're not. We stared at each other across the kitchen, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. This wasn't the mother who'd raised me. Or maybe it was, and I'd just never seen her clearly before. When Dad gets home, we're going to talk about this as a family, she said, trying to regain control of the situation. We're going to figure out how to move forward. There's nothing to figure out. I'm going back to school. No, you're not. You can't stop me. She smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Maya, honey, you don't have any money. You don't have a car that isn't in our name. You don't have anywhere to go. You need us. I have scholarships. I have financial aid.
Do you? Are you sure about that?
Something in her tone made my blood turn to ice. What did you do? We did what we had to do. I ran upstairs to my room and tore through my desk drawers, looking for my financial aid documents. I'd kept copies of everything: scholarship letters, grant awards, loan paperwork. I was organized about these things. I had to be. The folder where I kept all my college financial documents was empty. Empty. I could hear Mom on the phone downstairs, her voice low and urgent. She was calling Dad. My laptop. I could check my student account online, see what financial aid I had, what my current enrollment status was. I opened it and tried to log into the university portal. Invalid username or password. I tried again. Same message. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat.
I tried my student email account.
This account has been deactivated. They hadn't just faked my expulsion. They'd actually had me withdrawn from school. Officially. My access to everything had been cut off. But how? How could they do that without my permission? I heard the front door slam and Dad's voice mixing with Mom's in the kitchen. Their conversation was getting heated. I crept to the top of the stairs to listen. Told you this was a bad idea from the beginning, Dad was saying. She was going to throw everything away, James. Everything we've planned for. And now she knows what we did. How exactly is this better? She'll come around. She has to. She doesn't have any other choice. Linda, she's not a child anymore. We can't just lock her in her room until she agrees to be a doctor. Can't we? The casual way she said it made my skin crawl. She doesn't have access to her accounts, Mom continued. She doesn't have her own money. She's completely dependent on us. For now. But what happens when she figures out how to contact the school directly? What happens when they realize we forged withdrawal paperwork? My knees gave out. I sank down onto the stairs, gripping the banister to keep from falling. They'd forged withdrawal paperwork. They'd actually removed me from school without my knowledge or consent. We'll deal with that when it happens, Mom said. Right now, we need to focus on making her understand why we did this. And how exactly do you plan to do that? However we have to. I heard footsteps coming toward the stairs and scrambled back to my room, closing the door as quietly as possible. A few seconds later, Dad knocked. Maya, can you come downstairs? We need to have a family meeting. A family meeting. Like this was some minor household issue we needed to discuss. I'll be down in a minute, I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I needed time to think. I needed to figure out exactly what they'd done and how to undo it. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of their betrayal. I searched through my room for any documents they might have missed. In the back of my closet, behind some old photo albums, I found a small box where I'd kept important papers since high school. My birth certificate was there, my social security card, my passport, and copies of my original college acceptance letters and financial aid awards. I'd gotten a full academic scholarship to Yale, full tuition, plus a stipend for living expenses. I'd also qualified for need-based grants and low-interest federal loans. My parents had been paying almost nothing for my education. All those guilt trips about the cost of my tuition, all those reminders about their investment in my future, it was all lies.
They'd
Been profiting from my education, probably pocketing the living expense stipend and loan money. I felt sick. There was another knock on my door. Maya, we're waiting for you. I went downstairs with my folder of documents tucked under my arm. They were sitting in the living room exactly like they had been 3 months ago when they'd first shown me the fake expulsion letter.
sit down, Dad said.
I remained standing. I know what you did, I said. All of it. Mom glanced at Dad. Maya, you're upset, and you're not seeing this clearly. I'm seeing it perfectly clearly. You faked my expulsion because I was considering changing majors. You forged withdrawal paperwork to actually remove me from school. And you've been stealing my financial aid money. Dad's face went pale. It's not that simple. Isn't it? You've been committing fraud. Multiple kinds of fraud. We've been managing your finances responsibly, Mom said. The money you didn't spend on living expenses, we put into savings for you. Show me. Silence. Show me the savings account. Show me where all that money went. More silence. You can't because you spent it. You've been using my scholarship money to supplement your own lifestyle. Maya, we've provided for you your entire life, Dad said, his voice taking on that authoritative tone he used with difficult patience. We've given you everything. You've stolen from me. You've lied to me. You've sabotaged my future. We've protected your future, Mom snapped. Do you think we wanted to do this? Do you think this was easy for us? I think you did whatever you thought would give you the most control over my life. Control? Dad stood up, and for the first time in my life, I was actually afraid of him. You want to talk about control? You're living in our house, eating our food, driving our car. Everything you have, we gave you. And you want to lecture us about control? Everything I have, I earned. The scholarship, the grants, the good grades, that was all me. The opportunities to earn those things, that was us. The stable home, the good schools, the support system, that was us. The manipulation, the lies, the fraud, that was also you. Mom started crying again. Maya, we're parents. We love you. Can't you see that everything we've done has been because we love you? No, I said quietly. People who love you don't destroy your life to control your choices. People who love you don't steal from you. People who love you don't lie to you for months and watch you fall apart. Then, what do you want to do? Dad asked. You want to call the police? You want to have your own parents arrested? The question hung in the air like a challenge. And suddenly, I realized that's exactly what I should do. I took the bus to the police station the next morning while my parents were at work. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night researching fraud laws and educational crimes. What my parents had done wasn't just morally wrong, it was illegal. Identity theft, mail fraud, forgery, theft of federal financial aid funds. I had documentation for all of it. The officer who took my statement was a middle-aged woman named Detective Rodriguez. She listened to my story with increasing concern, taking notes and asking detailed questions about timelines and documentation. This is pretty serious, she said when I finished. Financial aid fraud is a federal crime. Forging official documents, intercepting mail, your parents could be looking at significant jail time. I just want my life back, I said. I want to return to school. I understand. But Maya, I have to ask, are you sure you want to pursue this? These are your parents we're talking about. Once we start this process, there's no going back. I thought about that question all the way home. Was I sure? 3 months ago, I would have said no. 3 months ago, I would have done anything to protect my parents, even from consequences they deserved. But 3 months ago, I didn't know who they really were. I walked into the house to find them waiting for me in the living room. Again. Where were you today? Mom asked. I could lie. I could pretend I'd been job hunting or running errands. But I was done with lies. I filed a police report. The color drained from both their faces. Maya, what have you done? Dad whispered. What you forced me to do. Mom started hyperventilating. You called the police on your own parents? You committed federal crimes against your own daughter. We can fix this, Dad said quickly. We can call the school, explain there was a misunderstanding, get you re-enrolled. With what money? You've spent my financial aid. We'll pay it back. We'll take out loans. We'll mortgage the house if we have to. It's too late for that. Maya, please. Mom was sobbing now. We're family. Family doesn't do this to each other. You're right. Family doesn't do this to each other. But you did it to me first. We made a mistake, Dad said. A terrible mistake. But ruining our lives won't fix yours. I'm not ruining your lives. I'm holding you accountable for ruining mine. The police won't do anything, Mom said suddenly, her tears stopping as quickly as they'd started. You don't have any proof. I pulled out my folder and spread the documents across the coffee table. The original financial aid letters. The fake expulsion notice. Screenshots of my deactivated accounts. Bank statements I'd requested from my student account. I have plenty of proof. They stared at the evidence of their crimes laid out in front of them. Maya, Dad's voice was different now.
Pleading.
Your daughter. Our only child. If we go to prison, you'll have no one. I already have no one. You made sure of that. That's not true. We're still your parents. We still love you. You love the idea of me. The version of me that does exactly what you want, when you want, without question. You don't love the real me. That's not fair. What's not fair is stealing 3 months of my life. What's not fair is making me believe I was a failure and a cheater. What's not fair is destroying my future because you couldn't handle the possibility that I might choose my own path.
My phone rang.
Detective Rodriguez. Maya, we've reviewed your documentation and spoken with the university. We're ready to move forward with charges if you want to proceed. But I need to confirm, this is your final decision? I looked at my parents, sitting on their expensive couch in their expensive house, surrounded by the life they'd built on lies and manipulation. Yes, I said. File the charges. Dad collapsed back into the couch like I'd shot him. Maya, please, Mom begged. Think about what you're doing. Think about what happens to us. I've thought about it. For the past 24 hours, I've thought about nothing else. And I realized that what happens to you is no longer my responsibility. You're adults. You made choices. Those choices have consequences. We're your parents. You were my parents, right up until you decided that controlling my life was more important than loving me. I walked toward the stairs, then turned back. Detective Rodriguez said it'll take a few days to process everything. I'd use that time to find a good lawyer if I were you. Maya, wait. Dad stood up. What about you? Where will you go? For the first time in months, I smiled. That's not your problem anymore. I went upstairs and started packing. I didn't have much. Most of my college things were already in storage, and I'd been living in a kind of suspended animation for months. But I packed what was mine, what I'd earned, what they couldn't take away from me. My phone buzzed with text messages as word got out. My parents were calling everyone they knew, trying to control the narrative, trying to paint me as an ungrateful daughter who'd lost her mind. But I didn't care anymore. Let them spin their story. The truth was documented now. Official. Out of their hands. For the first time in 3 months, I felt like I could breathe. I moved in with my college roommate Emma temporarily. She lived about an hour from campus and had graduated the previous year, working as a research assistant at a biotech company. When I called her and explained everything, she didn't hesitate. Pack your shit and get over here, she said. And Maya?
I'm so sorry.
We all wondered where you disappeared to. Emma's apartment was small, but it felt like freedom. For the first time in months, I was in a space where no one was monitoring my every move, where I could make decisions without permission, where I could just exist as myself. The university was incredibly helpful once they understood what had happened. Mrs. Patterson connected me with the dean of students, who connected me with the financial aid office, who helped me understand exactly what my parents had done. They'd forged my signature on withdrawal paperwork in February. They'd redirected my financial aid refund checks to their own bank account. They'd even canceled my student health insurance without my knowledge. But here's what shocked me most. They'd been doing this gradually for months before the fake expulsion. Your parents have been calling regularly since your sophomore year, the financial aid director told me. They convinced us they were helping manage your finances as a family arrangement. We should have required your direct authorization, but they were very persuasive. The scope of their manipulation was staggering. They'd been systematically taking control of every aspect of my college experience, positioning themselves as intermediaries between me and my own life. How much money are we talking about? I asked. She pulled up my account and showed me the numbers. Over 2 years, they diverted nearly $30,000 in financial aid refunds and living expense stipends.
Tire-t-il tous en dollars?
Money that was supposed to support me through college. Money they'd stolen while lecturing me about the cost of my education. The good news is we can restore your enrollment immediately, she continued. You're still technically a student in good standing. The withdrawal was fraudulent, so we're treating it as if it never happened. What about the money? That's more complicated. We'll work with law enforcement to recover what we can, but realistically... She trailed off with an apologetic shrug. I understood. My parents had probably spent most of it. Even if they were convicted, I'd be lucky to see half of it back. But I didn't care about the money anymore. I cared about reclaiming my life. The hardest part was facing my former classmates. 3 months is a long time in college years. Everyone had moved on, made new friends, adapted to my absence. I felt like a ghost returning to haunt my old life. Marcus was the first person to reach out when word spread that I was back. I heard what happened, he said when he called. Maya, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was that bad. You tried to tell me, I said. I should have listened. No, you shouldn't have had to listen. You should have been able to trust your parents. We met for coffee, and he filled me in on everything I'd missed. Who was dating who, which professors had retired, what new research opportunities had opened up. Normal college drama that felt surreal after months of family trauma. What are you going to do now? He asked. Finish my degree. Figure out what I actually want to study. Try to rebuild the life they stole from me. And them? Your parents. I stared into my coffee cup. I don't know. Part of me hopes they go to prison. Part of me hopes they disappear, and I never have to see them again. And part of me... I paused, surprised by the emotion in my voice. Part of me still misses the people I thought they were. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's normal. You're grieving. Grieving. The parents you thought you had. They're gone, even if the people who replaced them are still walking around. That's a real loss. He was right. I was mourning the death of my family, even though my parents were still alive. The criminal case moved slowly. Detective Rodriguez kept me updated, but legal processes take time, especially when they involve federal charges. My parents hired an expensive lawyer who immediately started trying to paint me as an unstable, vindictive daughter seeking revenge against loving parents who'd made a mistake. But the evidence was too strong. Bank records don't lie. Forged signatures don't lie. The paper trail of their deception was extensive and damning. 3 weeks after I'd filed the report, Detective Rodriguez called with an update. Your parents want to make a deal, she said. What kind of deal? Full restitution of the stolen funds, plus damages. In exchange, they're asking for reduced charges and no jail time. What do you think? Honestly, it's not a bad offer. Financial crimes like this usually result in probation and restitution anyway, especially for first-time offenders. The money is the important thing. But it wasn't just about money. It was about justice. It was about accountability. It was about making sure they couldn't do this to someone else. I need to think about it, I told her. Take your time.
But Maya?
You should know your parents want to meet with you. They're asking for a chance to explain themselves. The thought of sitting in a room with them again made me physically ill. I don't think I'm ready for that. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. But their lawyer thinks it might help with closure.
For all of you.
Closure. What a concept. That night, I called Emma's older sister Sarah, who was a family therapist. I'd met her a few times and always found her perspective helpful. Do you think I should meet with them? I asked. What do you hope to accomplish? I don't know. Maybe I want to understand why they did it. Maybe I want them to admit what they did was wrong. Maybe I want to hear them apologize. And what if they don't do any of those things? What if they just try to justify their actions or make you feel guilty for prosecuting them? I hadn't considered that possibility, but of course that's exactly what they'd do. Then I guess I'll know for sure who they really are, I said. Maya, you already know who they really are. They showed you through their actions. The question is whether you're ready to accept that reality. She was right. I'd been holding on to this fantasy that there was some explanation, some reason that would make their betrayal understandable, if not forgivable. But there wasn't. They destroyed my life because they couldn't handle losing control over me. That was it. That was the whole story. I called Detective Rodriguez back the next morning. I'll take the deal, I said. But I don't want to meet with them. I'm done. Are you sure? I'm sure. Process the restitution agreement and let me know when it's final. Maya, can I ask you something? Do you think you'll ever forgive them? It was a question I'd been avoiding, but it deserved an honest answer. I don't know, I said. Maybe someday. But right now, forgiveness feels like another way for them to avoid consequences. Right now, I need justice more than I need closure. The restitution process took 2 months to finalize. During that time, my parents tried everything they could to contact me. Phone calls, emails, letters, showing up at Emma's apartment building. They even tried using other family members as intermediaries. My Aunt Carol, Dad's sister, called me on a Tuesday evening in late July. Maya, I know this is difficult, but your parents are devastated. They're my brother and sister-in-law, but more importantly, they're your parents. Don't you think you owe them a chance to explain? Aunt Carol, did they tell you what they actually did? They said there was a misunderstanding about your college situation. A misunderstanding. That's what they're calling fraud now. Maya, they love you. Whatever happened, I know they were trying to do what they thought was best. They stole $30,000 from me. They faked legal documents. They destroyed my academic career because I considered changing my major. What part of that sounds like love to you? Silence on the other end of the line. I didn't know it was that serious, she finally said. That's because they're lying to everyone, just like they lied to me. After that conversation, I realized they were probably spinning a completely different version of events to anyone who would listen. Poor parents, ungrateful daughter, family misunderstanding blown out of proportion. I decided to control my own narrative. I wrote a detailed letter explaining exactly what had happened and sent it to every family member, every family friend, everyone in their social circle who might hear their version first. I included copies of documentation, the fake expulsion letter, the bank records showing diverted funds, the university's confirmation that I'd never been expelled. The response was swift and divided. Some people were horrified and offered support. Others accused me of airing family business in public and destroying my parents' reputations. My grandmother, Mom's mother, called me crying. Maya, how could you do this to your parents? How could you humiliate them like this? Grandma, they humiliated themselves when they decided to commit crimes against their own daughter. But their family forgives. Family protects each other. They didn't protect me. They made a mistake. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated campaign of manipulation and theft that lasted for years. But she couldn't hear it. To her, parents were always right, children were always obligated to forgive, and family loyalty trumped everything else. I realized then that some people would never understand my choice. They'd always see me as the daughter who destroyed her family rather than the victim who sought justice. The final restitution agreement was signed in August. My parents agreed to pay back the full $30,000 plus an additional $10,000 in damages. They pled guilty to reduced charges and received 3 years of probation plus community service. No jail time. Detective Rodriguez called to let me know it was over. How do you feel? She asked. Empty, I said, surprising myself with the honesty. That's normal. You've been focused on this fight for months. Now that it's over, you might feel a little lost. I thought I'd feel vindicated, or relieved, or something. Justice doesn't always feel the way we think it will. But Maya, you did the right thing. You held them accountable. That matters. Maybe. But it didn't bring back the 3 months of my life I'd lost. It didn't erase the damage to my relationships or my trust in people. It didn't magically heal the trauma of discovering that the people who were supposed to love me most had betrayed me so completely. I was back in school full-time by September, living in a studio apartment near campus. The financial aid office had worked with me to restructure my funding, and the restitution money helped cover what I'd lost. But everything felt different now. I was hyper-aware of people's motivations, constantly looking for signs of manipulation or dishonesty. I'd become suspicious of kindness, wondering what people wanted from me. Marcus and I had started dating again, slowly and carefully. But even with him, someone I trusted, I found myself holding back. "You know I'm not them, right?" he said one evening when I'd pulled away from a conversation about future plans. "I know that intellectually, but emotionally? Emotionally, I'm still learning how to trust anyone, including myself." "What do you mean?" "I lived with them for 21 years and never saw who they really were. How do I trust my judgment about anyone else?" Maybe you weren't supposed to see it. Maybe good people don't expect the people they love to lie to them. Maybe. Or maybe I was just naive. There's a difference between naive and trusting. Trusting is a good thing. They're the ones who broke that trust. He was probably right, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. My parents sent letters sometimes. Long, rambling letters about how sorry they were, how much they loved me, how they'd made terrible mistakes, but they were still my family. I stopped reading them after the first few. They all said the same thing. "We were wrong, but you're wrong too for not forgiving us." There was never any real accountability. Never any acknowledgement of the full scope of what they'd done to me. Just apologies that felt like manipulation, attempts to make me feel guilty for not welcoming them back into my life. By October, I was seeing a therapist regularly. Dr. Kim specialized in family trauma and helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't just betrayal, it was a form of abuse. "They used your love for them as a weapon against you," she explained. "They counted on your trust, your loyalty, your desire to please them. That's not a mistake or an error in judgment. That's calculated emotional abuse. But they're my parents. They raised me. They took care of me. Abusers can love their victims and still abuse them. Your parents probably do love you in their way. But their love is conditional and controlling. That's not healthy love. So what do I do now?" You keep building your own life. You keep setting boundaries. You keep prioritizing your own well-being over their comfort. What if they never understand what they did wrong? Then that's their loss, not yours. It was a hard truth to accept, but a necessary one. The breaking point came in November, during Thanksgiving week. I'd made plans to spend the holiday with Emma's family, grateful to have somewhere to go that felt safe and normal. But the week leading up to it, everything started falling apart. First, I got a call from the financial aid office. There was a problem with my spring semester funding. Some kind of administrative error that would delay my aid package by several weeks, possibly months. Then I got an email from my landlord. The building had been sold, and all tenants needed to move out by January 1st. Then Marcus and I had our worst fight yet. He'd suggested I consider reaching out to my parents for the holidays, just to see if there was a way to repair the relationship. "I can't keep watching you carry all this anger," he said. "It's eating you alive." So I should just forgive them? Pretend nothing happened. I'm not saying that. But maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe you could try family therapy or... Marcus, they committed crimes against me. This isn't a communication problem that can be fixed with therapy. But they're still your parents, and you're still their daughter. That has to count for something. It counted for nothing when they decided to destroy my life. "Maya, I love you, but you're becoming someone I don't recognize. You're so angry all the time, so suspicious, so closed off. Maybe this is who I really am. Maybe the trusting, optimistic person you fell in love with was just naive. Or maybe you're letting them win by letting their betrayal change who you are at your core. I stormed out of his apartment that night and didn't speak to him for 3 days. By Wednesday of Thanksgiving week, I was falling apart. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on my classes. I felt like I was drowning in the consequences of choices I'd never made. I found myself sitting in my car, in the parking lot of my old high school at 2 in the morning, staring at the building where I'd once believed I had a bright future ahead of me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Maya, it's Mom. I know you don't want to talk to us, but please know that we love you and we're thinking of you today. Happy Thanksgiving. I stared at that message for 20 minutes, and then I did something I hadn't done since the day I discovered their lies. I cried. Not angry tears or frustrated tears, but deep, grieving sobs for everything I'd lost. Not just my relationship with my parents, but my sense of safety in the world, my ability to trust, my belief that people who love you won't hurt you. I cried for the daughter I used to be, who believed her parents were heroes. I cried for the future I'd planned that would never exist. I cried for the family holidays that would never happen again, the shared memories that were now tainted with lies. And then, somewhere in the middle of that breakdown, something shifted. I realized I was grieving people who had never really existed. The parents I'd loved were fictional characters my real parents had played. The family I missed was a performance they'd put on to control me. The people who had actually raised me, the ones who stole from me, lied to me, manipulated me, I didn't miss them at all. What I missed was the illusion, the fantasy of having parents who truly loved and supported me. But mourning a fantasy was keeping me stuck in the past. It was preventing me from building a real life with real people who actually cared about me. I drove home and called Marcus. "I'm sorry," I said when he answered. "You were right about one thing. I am letting them win by staying angry." "Maya, it's the middle of the night. Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay, but I think I know how to get there." "What do you mean?" "I've been so focused on what they took from me that I forgot about what I still have, what I've built despite them, which is my education, my independence, my relationship with you, my friendship with Emma, my future that I get to choose. Those are good things to focus on. I'm not saying I'm ready to forgive them. I may never be ready for that, but I'm ready to stop letting their betrayal define my entire life." What changed? I realized I was grieving people who never existed. The parents I thought I had were just roles they played. The real people who raised me, I don't actually want them in my life. That's a big realization.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of freeing. The next morning, I called Dr. Kim and scheduled an emergency session. I told her about my breakthrough, about the shift in my thinking. "It sounds like you're moving from the anger stage of grief into acceptance," she said. "Is that good?" "It's progress. Anger can be useful. It helped you take action, seek justice, protect yourself. But staying angry forever only hurts you. So, what comes next? Next, you focus on building the life you actually want, instead of fighting against the life they tried to force on you." What if they keep trying to contact me? Then you maintain your boundaries. You don't have to engage with them just because they're your parents. What if other people don't understand that choice? Other people's opinions about your family relationships are not your responsibility. That afternoon, I did something I should have done months earlier. I blocked my parents' phone numbers, email addresses, and social media accounts. I sent a certified letter to their house stating that any further attempts to contact me would be considered harassment. I wasn't doing it out of anger anymore. I was doing it out of self-preservation. Some relationships are too toxic to salvage, even family relationships, especially family relationships. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. By December, I was ready to take control of my narrative completely. The criminal case had been resolved, but there were still civil matters to address. My parents had damaged more than just my finances. They damaged my reputation, my academic standing, and my relationships. And I'd learned enough about the law to know I had options. I met with a civil attorney named Patricia Walsh, who specialized in family law and personal injury cases. You have grounds for a civil lawsuit, she told me after reviewing my case. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation, educational interference. The damages go well beyond the money they stole. What kind of damages? Lost educational opportunities, therapy costs, career impact, pain, and suffering. We could be looking at a significant settlement. And if they can't afford it, then we go after their assets. The house, his medical practice, her real estate business. Everything. I thought about it for a week. Did I want to destroy them financially? Did I want to take their house, their careers, their entire life? Yes, I absolutely did. Not out of spite, but out of justice. They'd try to destroy my future because I wanted to make my own choices. They'd stolen my money, my education, my trust. They'd turned my extended family against me and tried to isolate me from everyone who cared about me. But more importantly, they were still telling lies about what had happened. Still playing the victim. Still trying to manipulate the narrative. It was time to set the record straight publicly. I filed the civil lawsuit in January, seeking $200,000 in damages. But that wasn't the real weapon. The real weapon was the local newspaper. Our town wasn't huge, about 50,000 people, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business. Dad had been a prominent doctor there for 15 years. Mom was a successful real estate agent. They were well-known, respected members of the community. I called the investigative reporter at the local paper and told her the whole story. She was fascinated. "This is incredible," she said. "I've never heard of parents literally faking their child's expulsion to control their career choices. Will you write about it? Are you sure you want this public? Once it's in print, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. People should know who they really are." The article ran on a Sunday in February. The headline was "Local Doctor and Wife Convicted of Defrauding Daughter's Education." It included interviews with university officials, copies of the forged documents, and a detailed timeline of their deception. The response was immediate and devastating. Dad's medical practice started losing patients within days. The hospital where he had privileges launched an ethics investigation. Mom's real estate firm quietly asked her to take a leave of absence. Their friends stopped calling. Their social invitations dried up. People crossed the street to avoid talking to them. My Aunt Carol called me, furious. "Maya, how could you do this to them? They've lost everything." "Good," I said. "That was the point. They're your parents. They were criminals who happened to give birth to me. There's a difference. You've destroyed their lives over a mistake. They destroyed my life on purpose. I'm just making sure everyone knows what kind of people they really are." The civil lawsuit settled out of court in March. They agreed to pay me $150,000 and sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing them from talking publicly about our family situation. But the NDA only applied to them, not to me. The money was nice, but the real satisfaction came from watching their carefully constructed facade crumble. All those years of pretending to be perfect parents, upstanding citizens, pillars of the community, gone. Dad had to close his practice and take a job at a clinic 2 hours away. Mom lost her real estate license and ended up working as a receptionist at a dental office. They had to sell the house. The house where they'd raised me, where they'd taught me about honesty and integrity and family values. The house where they'd looked me in the eye and destroyed my life with a forged letter. I bought it. Not to live in. I never wanted to set foot in that place again. I bought it as an investment property and rented it out to a nice family with college-age kids. The irony was perfect. My parents' house was now funding my graduate education. Marcus thought I'd gone too far. "Maya, I understand wanting justice, but this feels like revenge." What's the difference? Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making people suffer. They made me suffer for months while they watched and did nothing. They stole my money, my education, my trust. They turned half my family against me. And even after they were caught, they never showed genuine remorse. So, you decided to ruin their lives? I decided to make sure they faced real consequences for their actions. The criminal case was a slap on the wrist. This is accountability. What if they genuinely apologized? What if they tried to make real amends? But they didn't. Even now, they're telling people I'm a vindictive daughter who overreacted to a simple misunderstanding. And now you're proving them right. That stung because part of me worried he was correct. Had I become vindictive? Had I gone too far? But then I remembered sitting in my childhood bedroom for 3 months, believing I was a failure and a cheater. I remembered the shame, the isolation, the way they'd watched me fall apart and said nothing. I remembered the $30,000 they'd stolen while lecturing me about gratitude and responsibility.
No.
I hadn't gone too far. I'd gone exactly as far as necessary to ensure they couldn't do this to anyone else. Dr. Kim helped me work through the guilt. You exposed the truth about what they did, she said. The consequences they're facing are the natural result of their own actions, not your vindictiveness. Marcus thinks I've become someone I'm not. Who do you think you've become? Someone who doesn't let people hurt her without consequences. Someone who protects herself instead of protecting other people's feelings. And is that a bad thing? I don't know. It doesn't feel like the person I used to be. The person you used to be was vulnerable to manipulation because she trusted people who didn't deserve trust. Maybe becoming someone stronger isn't a bad thing. Even if it costs me relationships. Maya, any relationship that requires you to accept abuse or betrayal isn't worth having. She was right. And deep down, I knew Marcus would either come to understand my choices or he wouldn't. But I couldn't spend my life apologizing for refusing to be a victim. It's been 2 years since I discovered the truth about my parents. 2 years since my life imploded, and I had to rebuild it from nothing. Marcus and I broke up 6 months after the lawsuit settled. He couldn't accept the person I'd become, and I couldn't go back to being the person I used to be. We ended things amicably, but we both knew we wanted different things from life. He wanted someone who believed in forgiveness and family healing. I'd become someone who believed in boundaries and consequences. Neither of us was wrong. We were just incompatible. I finished my bachelor's degree in environmental science, the major my parents had tried to prevent me from pursuing. My GPA was a 3.9. I got into graduate school with a full fellowship. I moved across the country for my PhD program. Fresh start, new city, people who knew nothing about my family drama. I don't talk about my parents anymore. When people ask about my family, I say they're not in my life and change the subject. Most people don't push. Occasionally, someone will express shock that I could cut off my own parents. They'll lecture me about forgiveness, about family bonds, about the importance of working things out. I used to try to explain. Now I just smile and say, you have to know the whole story to understand. Some people can't imagine parents who would systematically destroy their child's life. They can't conceive of love that conditional, that controlling, that destructive. I envy them their innocence. My parents still try to contact me sometimes. Birthday cards that get returned to sender. Emails that go straight to spam. They've created new social media accounts to try to reach me, but I block them as soon as I identify them. Last Christmas, they hired a private investigator to find my address and send a package. Photos of me as a child, letters about how much they miss me, promises that they've changed. I threw it all in the garbage without reading most of it. Because here's what I've learned. People who truly love you don't destroy your life to control your choices. People who are genuinely sorry don't spend years making excuses for their behavior. People who have actually changed don't keep trying to manipulate you into giving them another chance. My parents haven't changed. They've just gotten more desperate. I have a different kind of family now. Emma and her sister Sarah. My graduate advisor, Dr. Peterson, who's become a mentor and friend. My lab mates who've become like siblings. It's not the family I was born into, but it's the family I chose. And they chose me back. I'm dating someone new now. Alex is a fellow grad student studying renewable energy systems. When I told him about my family situation, their response was simple. That sounds really hard. I'm glad you got away from them.
No judgment.
No pressure to reconcile. No suggestions about forgiveness. Just acceptance of my choices and support for my well-being. That's what love actually looks like. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never gone to the registrar's office that day. If I'd just accepted their lies and spent the rest of my life believing I was a failure, I probably would have eventually gone to community college, maybe transferred somewhere less prestigious. I would have pursued whatever career they approved of. I would have married someone they chose, lived my life according to their script. I would have been miserable, but I might never have known why. Instead, I'm pursuing research that could help address climate change. I'm living in a city I love, doing work that matters to me, surrounded by people who respect my autonomy. I'm not the daughter they wanted, but I'm exactly the person I was meant to become. People ask me sometimes if I think I'll ever forgive my parents. The question assumes that forgiveness is the goal, the healthy endpoint of this story. But I've realized that forgiveness isn't always necessary for healing. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is accept that some people are too toxic to have in your life, even if they're family. My parents taught me something valuable, though not what they intended. They taught me that I'm strong enough to survive betrayal, that I can rebuild my life from nothing, that I don't need their approval or anyone else's to be worthy of love and respect. They tried to control my future by destroying my present. Instead, they freed me to create a life they could never have imagined. In the end, their betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to me. It showed me who I really am,